Welcome back to Grade 7 Geography, Unit number 2, Our World's Natural Resources, Use and Sustainability. This is lesson number 14. How does our use of natural resources vary? How do we measure the impact of our natural resource use? Our use of natural resources has changed over time. People's idea of what is a need and what is a want has changed as well. As things which used to become wants turn into needs, we use more natural resources. And I'll give you a couple of quick examples of this. At one time, a computer was considered a want. A cell phone was considered a want. You did not need those things. But today, it's becoming increasingly apparent that people really do need a computer and they really do need a phone in order to uh, continue some of their day-to-day activities. Today, we do not depend only on the natural resources that are available locally. Technology makes it easier for us to get food, building materials, and fuel from other parts of the world. While this has allowed people in wealthier countries to lead longer, more comfortable lives and enjoy more luxuries, it means that a higher number of resources are being taken from areas that could really use those resources for basic survival. So, just interesting to compare these two pictures. On the one side, we have a lot of pretty looking items, but they aren't really things that we need. And these luxuries tend to be produced at the expense. What we see in this picture on the right, where you've got a family that has to pick through garbage to get basic necessities such as food. Population changes also affect the way we use natural resources. In general, when the population increases, a greater number of natural resources are used. This is because more and more people are relying on the same amount of natural resources for food, clothing, shelter, and water. Geographers look at population graphs to help them predict which countries are increasing in population and will therefore need more natural resources. So here's a question for you to think about. Just looking at this graph here, and our legend here shows us what each color represents. As the population increases, what happens to the amount of oil and minerals being used? So pause the video, consider this question, and then we'll discuss this in tomorrow's class. The way we use natural resources affects the environment. When we do not use resources sustainably, we lose forests and we pollute our water and air. In the second half of this lesson, we are going to learn how to measure the impact of our use of natural resources. Natural resources can be measured in terms of our ecological footprint. An ecological footprint is an estimation of the land needed to produce the natural resources needed to support daily life. This footprint is measured in hectares. An ecological footprint is calculated by answering a survey about our lifestyles, such as the homes we live in, where we get our food, and the energy we use. Calculating our ecological footprint tells us how able our planet is to meet our demands. The world average ecological footprint is 2.7 hectares per person. Now, despite its very good reputation, Canada actually has a higher than average ecological footprint. Canada's ecological footprint is 6.4 hectares per person. This number is scary since Earth can only support 1.8 hectares per person. Canada really needs to improve the ways in which its people use their natural resources. I like this diagram uh, because it just points out that um, Canada casts a very large ecological footprint, much larger than we really should be. Geographers also use findings from world organizations to look for patterns and trends in how resources are used. Every year, the UN releases the Human Development Index. The HDI is an annual evaluation of countries based on life expectancy, income, and literacy. Geographers use the HDI to see which countries are developed, developing, or underdeveloped. So just looking at this world map here, okay, the countries that are in various shades of green have a higher ranking on the Human Development Index. Countries that are in yellow, orange, lighter red, they get a medium score on the HDI. And the countries that rank low on the HDI are in the darker reds and the black. So just take a moment to consider which parts of the world tend to have the higher scores and which parts of the world tend to have the lowest scores. And we'll talk about that some more tomorrow. A report by the United Nations Development Programme has made the connection between the HDI and ecological footprints left by countries. Developed countries tend to use their resources wastefully and will even acquire resources from other countries to meet their needs. Canada is using its resources 50% faster than the Earth can replace them. Geographers argue that if people did pay the real cost for resources, they would gladly change their habits. Because we have a vast supply of water, Canada pays less for water, yet they use water much more than people do in other countries. Too many Canadians do not realize how much water costs, meaning that water continues to get wasted. So this graph here, it's not misleading. It has been drawn appropriately, uh, but when you look at it, it looks like Canada is actually doing better compared to other countries in the world because we have the smallest uh, cost of water per cubic meter. But what this graph does not take into consideration is the fact that we have so much water that uh, we don't have to charge people as much to use it, but we're still wasting our water far more than countries that on this graph are paying much more for water. The word cost means more than just money. Cost can be used to describe the negative impact on the environment. The term social cost refers to people getting sick from drinking and using polluted water. If polluted water enters farmland, the soil is ruined and there will be less food for people to eat. This is another social cost of using natural resources. Our current generation must start considering the costs of using natural resources before we start taking them from the earth. And this final slide is a check for your understanding of today's lesson. So read each of the 5 statements and then consider whether each statement is true or false. If you're having difficulty, please go back Watch the video again and then try this activity. And during tomorrow's class, we will take up these solutions together. But for now, this concludes today's video.